You know, he's really he's shameless in intellectual argument. He's absolutely without character, a moral foundation, or even intellectual substance.
Welcome to Ali, or Alison Taylor, who is a very good friend of mine. So I feel kind of weird, like being like, so tell us about yourself, Ali, because it's like I pretty much know all the answers.
Do you? You thought you did, and then I made you watch this movie, and now you have some more questions.
Me and Ali studied together, and Ali's a really real fan of like transgressive, fucked up shit. So we thought, who better to bring on to talk about Georges Bataille's The Story of the Eye and one of her a movie of her suggestion to pair with it. Nekromantik. So usually we start with a bit of a so what are you into? What do you like reading and that sort of stuff? As I said, I know some of the answers to this, so
yeah. Sure. My favorites, I mean, I've got my own story about Story of the Eye. I actually stumbled upon it. It was formative reading. I found it in the Queensland College of Art library one day when I was procrastinating and was just like, what the hell is this? I need more of this in my life. And that started me down this journey of like, who is Bataille? And started reading his other stuff and kind of been a bit obsessed ever since. But apart from Bataille, quite fond of Nabokov and Cormac McCarthy are probably my two best favorites. Bit of Henry Miller. Yeah. Other kinds of messed up kind of
different sorts. You like messed up, but like male writers, essentially.
Yeah. And I have so many more recommendations for your show.
God.
Cormac McCarthy, would you say Blood Meridians?
Yeah, definitely my favorite. And love Lolita.
I didn't know that already.
No, you didn't. That's like surprised. We've never had a conversation about books before.
And also I should just mention as well that Ali's a really great film critic and scholar and has written a awesome book about would we say it's kind of transgressive or cinema that is extreme in various ways.
Is my jam.
Yeah,
but also very ordinary. That because I went down the everyday route, but it's kind of like how are these messed up films so banal in other ways? But interested in anything weird.
But you should mention that because we did a couple of episodes. Well, whatever order it is, we did Cachet, and so I think that's one of those films that's disturbing and extreme in some ways, but also quite banal in others.
Were you there for the conference paper I gave on that movie?
I can't remember.
It was about 9 a.m. in the morning, after the night before had been quite debaucherous conference drinks, and then I'd warned everyone and said, look, I'm going to play this scene and here's what's going to happen. And it's the notorious slitting scene. But the person chairing the panel nearly fell off her chair. Oops.
No, I don't remember that. That sounds awesome.
It was good. Yeah. I think I was still drunk when I gave that paper, or at the very least hungover, but it was very amusing.
Hooray. What else are academic conferences for?
I know. Why do they have drinks while you're still presenting if it's happen?
Well, speaking of drinks, I'm doing the segue. Usually Reuben does the segues because he's such a segue queen.
Well, I you have to give some to you every now and then.
I'm imagining you riding around Melbourne on a Segway. That's what they're called, right?
I can imagine anyone in Melbourne riding on a Segway. But as the non-Melbourne one on the podcast, I can.
Oh, see, I don't even know where everyone is. I'm in Queensland.
I'm a Sydney boy. Well, I'm currently a Sydney boy.
Cool.
So we're all riding around in our own Gladys Berejiklians.
That's right.
Speaking of drinks, to segue back to
yeah.
What are we all drinking? In terms, did we theme it to Bataille and or Nekromantik? I don't know how you do this without unless. Is there some kind of
I for one am drinking urine, so I themed it.
I'm drinking fermented cum. In this tooth, so
Let's be on theme.
What are you drinking? Oh my God.
No, it's not. It's ginger beer. It's alcoholic ginger beer, which is a bit spicy, and that's about as theme as I can get. Yeah.
It resembles urine. I am quite a disgusting concoction. It is quite nice whiskey, and I've ruined it by adding some violet syrup to it.
Oh, fuck me!
Why?
Now I have some violet syrup, like a cordial that you do as a mixer. Now, let me explain.
Please.
Keeping with the theme, you know how it's not so much explicit in the story of the eye, although the story of the eye is explicit, but in philosophy about like death and life and sex and stuff and all those extremes and them flipping into the other and all that sort of shit. I thought, let's make something like that is really fucked up and mixed up in that way. So I went whiskey, violet syrup. So that's my overly
that sounds disgusting.
Thought out. And it is much like these texts.
Okay.
Look, I was going to be just drinking cough syrup because I've been ill since Wednesday, but after watching the movie, finally being able to get to watch the movie this morning, I was like, nah, I need a fucking drink.
So morning.
Rio was in the group chat before as well. He was like, I'm just going to take a shower before we start.
Oh, good idea. It's a bit like that.
He felt dirty.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes.
Right, so to segue again.
I am also drinking. Thank you very much.
What were you drinking?
Thank you, Matt. I am drinking Kaiju Crush because I want to feel tropical and happy again after.
You're drinking, Reuben, we are both drinking Stockade. That is beautiful.
Oh. And now to segue back into the next topic.
Yeah, that's the segue, Matt.
Have we lost Matt?
Yeah, sorry. I think the internet's really shit.
You were just throwing up that drink.
Yes, that as well. So, Story of the Eye, I would just want to ask Ali. You said you found it randomly, but what was it? What was it that drew you to it? Was it the urine?
Yes. No, it had the edition that was in the library. Had a black cover and it had an eyeball on it just sitting there. And I think there was an egg. And I was like, what is this? Like a cracked egg and an eyeball. And then I just flipped through a few pages and was like, whoa, what is this? And it was just, I'd never seen anything, because the context was university library. I wasn't like at an adult shop looking for some porn. It was like, I've never come across anything like this. Why is it in the university library? I'd never heard of this. And yeah, just was like, this is weird and fucked up, and I'm going to read it. And then I did. And it was even more weird and fucked up than I thought it would be. So yeah, that's my introduction to Story of the Eye. I wasn't seeking anything transgressive. It just by accident.
It's like Blue of Noon and stuff.
Not Blue of Noon.
Necrophilia.
Yeah. I've read Mare and Madame and I think a BC, which I haven't read for years. But yeah, I've read a little bit of his a book of poems, which is just awful.
Oh,
I'm just going to throw that out there. I love Bataille, but it's not good poetry.
But do you think it's a bad translation, or do you think it's probably not as good in French?
I hope it's a bad translation, but also it's just like every second word is cock.
Doesn't it make it
so
better?
It's probably it probably just is what it is. It's kind of,
Does it not just make it better that it's bad? Like, would you want him to make good poetry? Like, is it not fun?
Maybe not. It's fun. Yeah, it is fun. I mean, that was the other thing Matt and I bonded over at uni was really bad movies. So it is so bad it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, for anyone who hasn't read The Story of the Eye, it's basically like I would go further than say it's erotica. It's more just basically pornography, essentially. And it's sort of very extreme stuff. Like and this was written in early 20th century or late 19th. I can't remember.
No, this is like 40s, isn't it? 1940s.
Was it 1940? Okay, so
no, 1928.
1928.
Yeah. Is originally published under a pseudonym.
Yeah, which means Lord of the Toilets in Lord Ouch, or something like that. Lord for the English, Lord, obviously, and then I think it's a play on some French word which is slang for
means going to the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's basically kind of a series of pornographic escapades that kind of gradually get a bit more extreme. Like there's lots of urine, there are eggs, and it's basically a guy and his girlfriend and this other girl. We'll get to her later, but who go on sort of ridiculously pornographic adventures and just gets progressively more degenerate as it goes on, I guess, and kind of climaxes in a church where they kind of defile the church and rape him, they kill the priest, don't they?
Yeah. Well, that's the point, right? That's they kill him and then to supposedly like make sure that he orgasms at the exact moment of death.
Yeah. So that's basically the plot, such that it is. But so yeah. But what is it that you? What are your thoughts on this?
Just to maybe like
pull
back one step again. Is it really pornographic? I mean, I don't know. It's certainly not. I don't really find it. It's not erotic or anything like that. But I guess it depends on how we're defining pornography in this sense.
That was my exact thought, Reuben, in that despite it's overtly sexual, it comes across far more as horrific than anything pornographic. I mean, it gives you that same impetus.
I find it more like pornographic.
Just to like reel away and like discuss as opposed to lean forward and I don't know if my internet just dropped out there, sorry.
Oh, you've finished talking?
I don't.
I'm going to.
This is going to be an interesting episode.
I'm going to kill myself editing this.
Just make sure you orgasm at the same time.
My point being, I think
I've done that.
The pornographic point being, like, I think it's not erotically pornographic. It's pornographic that links back up to the violent. So it's like when you hear the Nazis being called pornographic or they're a pornographic political regime. That's what I sort of see at the heart of this novel, not a contemporary sense of the pornographic. It's lewdness for the sake of not quite. It's not being lewd for the sake of being lewd, to sort of give you pleasure or something like that, which I find to be more the erotic pornographic. But it's violent pornographic in the sense that it wants to shock to a certain extent, I guess.
Yeah, it wants to. I think, and that I guess that ties in with the philosophy and stuff that he sort of developed later in his life with transgressing boundaries or going beyond, the everyday and resacralizing modernity and things like that through extreme measures, but extreme, doing it accessing extremity. And that's where his kind of interest in sacrifice and stuff like that came from as well, I guess. Right.
Totally. It's this rupture with the ordinary that kind of he thinks is pretty much transcendental. So his book on eroticism kind of theoretically links all these things. So he goes through like human sacrifice as this moment of extreme rupture. He felt that eroticism was a similar kind of moment of extreme rupture where you sort of lose your sense of self and kind of dissolve in a sense with another person, and so that was this kind of transcendental moment. But yeah, that's where violence keeps coming in for him. He was really interested in human sacrifice as well, and we get bits of that, I guess, in this book. As Reuben was saying, it just sort of gets more and more violent.
Yeah. So and it's in some ways I think it's interesting because I don't know how influenced he was by like Freud and stuff, but it's very Story of the Eye in particular feels very that balance between, or not even balance, tension or building to a tension between Eros and Thanatos, and how they're basically two sides of the same coin kind of thing. Eros meaning obviously like sex and stuff, and Thanatos representing death and violence and stuff like that.
I think this book in a way was kind of him doing psychoanalysis on himself.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, the bit at the end where he's kind of referring to a friend who I should have written down who that was referring to, but it was a psychoanalyst kind of helping him work through these symbols. And that bit at the end, coincidences, is him kind of unpacking what these symbols were, which he never apparently intended. So I'd say if he wasn't influenced by Freud, he was at least subject to psychoanalysis.
Yeah, and I guess if it's early 20th century ish, then that stuff's kind of in the air anyway, isn't it? It's not necessarily pornographic in the way that we normally think about it, but it's kind of pornographic to me in form, even if not in kind of, I don't know, intention or content or whatever like that. And, I don't really like making those distinctions, but it's interesting because, it is structured in a way like a porn piece of pornography. It's that's the interesting part as well, is that it starts off very masturbatory. So they don't actually fuck until it's like halfway through the book or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, mostly just them like wanking each other or next to each other or with eggs or so it's like
milk and eggs.
Milk and eggs, yeah. Yeah. Too bad if you're lactose intolerant or allergic to dairy. What would vegans do?
They would not. It's not vegan friendly at all.
It's not a vegan friendly podcast.
No. Bullfights.
Yeah.
Eating testicles. Yeah,
but you see, like, I think the book is interesting because it ramps up. So it kind of starts out very like, oh, they're just sort of playing around together in a very adolescent way, I guess, and then kind of gets more and more extreme. And then finally they become adults by raping a priest.
Yeah, coming of age
usually
novel.
the other way around, so
emphasis on coming.
Yeah,
it's kind of these young people just kind of ecstatically leaning into their perversions. And I think you're right in terms of the structure, Matt, in terms of it does just kind of build into this, like, you can kind of get the sense Bataille's kind of building up to what's the ultimate desecration here. Oh, it's got to involve the church and it's got to involve the priest, and let's make it, if it's just kind of like them figuring out their interest in defilement, and then it just kind of explodes at the end in like this sacrilegious kind of image.
It does feel very stream of consciousness-y. It's like a teenage jack-off sesh. You don't really understand what you're doing until it happens. You're like, oh God, what did I do?
Oh God, there's an egg up my butt.
I have to admit, I'm so flabbergasted by this.
Yeah.
These texts. it was only in that second, and because I was just reading an online version, and it doesn't. And when he's talking about his father, I was like, I'm pretty sure that this is nonfiction. This bit, I don't know, but I think so. When he's talking about his father, abandoning his father with the housekeeper at the outset of World War. I don't remember the. Whatever. At that point, I was like, "Oh, okay, you're working through some shit." Was this meant to be anonymous? Did you ever want people to read this? But then he talked about showing it to his friend, reading out a passage to his friend. And I can't imagine ever writing down some core-based thoughts like this and being like, "G'day, mate. This is what I've been thinking about."
Yeah.
Maybe you need some better friends, Rio.
You can send us anything. If you send us anything, we'll read it.
Yeah.
No, I think this novel, and I think it comes back a little bit to your point too, Rio, and I think a few of the other points we've made, that there's a desire to read the novel like symbolically important, to read meaning into the novel that goes beyond it being merely pornographic, or goes beyond it being merely erotic fiction. And I feel like that tension's also maybe part of the game that Bataille is playing with us as well. That the sort of, I guess, maybe bourgeois desire for us to read symbols into things. That it can't just be merely about sex. It must be sort of avant-garde. It must be significant in some way. It's also maybe a kind of parody of the Freudian mind. But the Freudian mind must see everything as being significant of either adolescent repression or some sort of psychological repression, some sort of psychological game that's being played. And that, us as readers are the psychoanalysts, right? We are the people who are unpacking all of this. We are, we get Bataille down, tie him down to the chair, make sure he can't move, and, get everything out onto the table, as it were. Everything bare, everything fresh, give him a good look over. Story of the eye, I guess.
Yeah, I like what you say about this idea of perhaps reading more into it, because it's like, I feel like there is a tendency, given what he does after it, with like all the stuff about mysticism and resacralization and what's the term he calls it, limited experience, where like you push things to extreme to see what the limit of that experience is. Are people reading into the story of the eye, because the story of the eye comes before all this, doesn't it?
I should have made a note of when he published all the other things.
I'm pretty sure
it does. Yeah.
But it's also because he's also interested in like excess as well, and that there's always a he goes against sort of the model that there's the human condition is scarcity, or that we're always sort of confronted with different scarcities. For him, we're confronted by excesses. So I guess what that comes down to interpretation, and what it comes down to in regards towards reading, is that there's always an excess of interpretation. So by presenting something that is pornographic in this way, and particularly, this is written in the 1920s. This is not something that's come out today. This is, speak about things getting banned up until the 1980s. Even the movie we're talking about today was banned in Australia, banned in a number of different countries as well in the 1980s and 90s. And this is out here in the 1920s. Very French, I guess, but there's an immediate desire to read an excess of meaning into it, because there has to be an excess of meaning, otherwise it has no meaning at all.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, I think. But there is, I think, it seems like there is a tendency to read back all of the stuff that comes after into this first one. But maybe because this was perhaps his most well-known fictional treatment of those ideas, maybe he sort of did a test run through the fiction and then kind of sort of extrapolated it more in the philosophy and stuff.
I don't know anything about his philosophy or etc. I mean, so I guess kind of reading this, with regards to what Reuben was saying about like trying to divine meaning in the pornographic text, and then with the second half, him talking about his kind of distaste of his parents. And I'm like, okay, so there's this very literal, literal Freudian reading of the text, and that's what I've got. If that's it, I don't understand why this is renowned or whatever. I struggled to find any kind of meaning from this text. I don't know if I liked it. Yes, that's kind of. I'm sorry.
Not a pause.
I didn't find any resounding meaning from it, and it's funny because I was like, looking like, okay, the testes, the eggs, the eyeball, what? No. No.
I don't know. I find that my desire to read meaning to the text is also maybe what the text is about. It's also maybe a reflection on the fact that I have a very academic mindset that wants to find meaning in different things, particularly if they're French, I guess. But I think the novel itself is actually about meaninglessness. So I don't think it's entirely. I think it's entirely apt that you might read it and come away with it being like, well, I don't know what the fuck the point was. Because I think that's what the novel sort of confronts, that I said before. It confronts a godless universe where meaning and where moral values, I guess, are sort of thrown up in the air. And we could also read this as being a post-war novel as well, post-First World War novel. So if this is published in 28, that would mean it's published at the same time as The Wasteland, right? I think.
That's certainly how I thought of it.
So, and it's confronting death, not just in a literal sense, but also in the metaphorical sense of the death of transcendent meaning, and trying to like, how can we like recreate that to a certain extent? And for Bataille, it's much more the transcendental is found in the materialistic or in the base parts of our lives, which create that excess, which generate us toward a sort of transcendental sense. But that's all. When I say all this sort of stuff, I feel like, fuck, I'm a wanker, because like, which I think you have to be. Like, anyone who has like an academic mindset has to realize that you're a narcissistic wanker who has to read like particular meanings of these things. But
it just it really made me think, who was the person who read this and thought it would be part of a canon? maybe this is wanker, Reuben.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, wanker being the appropriate word.
And you, Ali, I'm sorry.
Very on theme. Very on theme.
we are all here to have a wank. That's the point of the podcast.
COVID safe because we're in different states.
Tossing off, as the novel has it in English.
Yeah.
I feel that feels too like much of a translation. Is that actually?
I'm hoping it's a bad translation.
I think the translation must have been like. I'll have a look at the publication details. I think it's just like in was first, in the 60s. Hang on.
Yeah, it feels a very British, like 1960s term.
I think Matt's looking. I was going to say as well, he was in, we haven't talked about the Surrealists, so he was in with the Surrealists, so there's probably a bit of that coming through. But what I love about Bataille's story was kind of, he fell out with Andre Breton because Breton essentially thought he was too gross. So it was just like, if you're too gross and perverted for the Surrealists, then that's like you should get a medal, I think. So he kind of formed his own faction. Yeah. And this has probably had something to do with it. Eggs and eyeballs and peeing on each other. Did you find what you're looking for, Matt?
Oh, no, I'm just saying that it said the translation was like in the 70s. So I was just saying that probably
was tossing off in vogue.
Yeah, perhaps tossing off was a 70s slang British thing. And maybe he didn't want to say wanking.
Tossing off.
Did anyone find it shocking? Like, do you think this still holds up as something that's a shocking text? Because I guess if you compared this to, say, 50 Shades of Grey, I think they're worlds apart in so many ways. But, like, I think it's still, the transgression is still pretty, like, I don't know, I think maybe it was Rio described it as kind of horrific. So I wonder what other people thought of it, reading it today, knowing that it was written back in the 20s.
I did find the priest stuff more naff. It's kind of like, oh, okay. But I mean, I guess because we live in such a godless society now, like defiling a priest isn't that that bad. I think like the kind of rape and abuse of a disabled teenager is a little bit more like to me than the priest stuff. Maybe it's because he does not like to talk about penises, and it became really apparent perhaps towards the end there when he talks about the priest's fat cock, just how little he talks about penises, and it kind of lingers on the female bodies in the text. And you could say that's the narrator's obsession, but I thought that was a little weird. I don't know if I'm getting my kind of lib feminist agenda on here. But having that part at the end where he talks about where they define the priest body, and he's just lingering on Simone's genitalia, I thought that made it a little far more creepier than what he intended.
Cool. I'm just gonna grab another drink.
Because I don't know. I don't know how much I find it to be particularly shocking anymore. I mean, this could also just be a reflection on me, I guess. But I find it much more. I find books that are obviously intending to shock not shocking, because I feel like, because I know in advance that this is going to be shocking, I'm already prepared for it, so it's not surprising. I'm just sort of like, well, okay, they kill a priest, they rape him and choke him to his death, like, fine. It's just it's so surface level, and I think that's the point as well. This is a in a truly like godless society, that these things aren't actually shocking anymore because they're not sacrilegious. You can't be sacrilegious in a godless society. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So, but at the same time, they're not like aesthetic in any sort of like pure sense or any sort of surface sense either. So I don't know. I find like for something to be truly shocking, it has to like come out of the blue. It has to come out of banality to a certain extent. Whereas the shockingness, well, what's if anything, like what's more shocking about the book is the fact that it is so banal a lot of the time. And in fact, there are actually moments of, I find it a very funny book. Just there are some like there are certain moments as well, just of like absolute campy humor in here. Like the narrator is sort of like they're at the sanatorium, I think, or something. And there's like one line where like it's like just bracketed off, like he just doesn't realize why he's not wearing pants. So like running through he was only tripping over with not wearing pants. Like just lines like that I feel like it's so over the top that I feel like it would be done like when we talk about the movie a bit later. The movie's even more campy and more deliberately campy. Yeah, so I don't know. The shocking aspect of it didn't really capture me that much.
There was one bit I do remember laughing out loud. It's this big detailed paragraph that's like detailing this fantasy that he's having about what they're going to do with Marcel once they bust her out, put her in a bathtub full of eggs, and then, Simone's going to do this, and, my cock's going to be here, and she's going to be here, and I'm going to come here, and then someone's going to pee from here. It's like super detailed and like prescriptive, and it just ends with, and she could also stick my cock in her mouth and whatnot. Like, and so on. Like, what's the rest of it? It's like, you've just put in so much effort kind of getting there and whatnot.
All right.
Have you got a new whiskey, Matt, or did you put that?
I'm not doing it.
Again?
I'm doing that again.
Yeah, please don't.
Just whiskey now.
No.
I think whiskey is disgusting, and it probably would have tasted better.
Yeah, but you know what? You're disgusting, Rio. So
No,
Wow.
I'm not, Reuben.
Wow.
It's
Shots fired.
strong established that I am disgusting. So.
This book is just your weekend.
Yeah. If you don't know me by now. All right, so let's talk about Nekromantik. This was Ali's suggestion. Ali chose this film to pair with Bataille. Would you like to take us through your reasoning for this, Alison? Why did you subject us to this film?
Why? Well, because you suggested Bataille, which I'm always on board for. But I was, trying to think of something that could match it in terms of transgressiveness. And it was the first thing that came to mind that could do it. I mean, it's also thematically linked. You've got some young-ish people leaning into their perversity, which just happens to be necrophilia. It also deals with, there's also masturbation and murder. I thought some links is less eggs, more eyeballs.
Lots of peeing though.
Yeah, also peeing in close up. Not a special effect, that really happened.
Okay, I actually really love this movie. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand why. Maybe it's because this was banned in Australia, right? And it's banned in lots of places, right?
no,
It is.
So it was banned in Australia, but I think quite late.
Okay.
I mean, as I was saying before we started recording again, it was really the second film that got more controversy than the first film. So the first film sort of went under the radar. No one really gave a shit. Then the second film sort of came out, I don't know, a number of years later, and that's what sort of really got everyone on edge for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why the second film was so much worse than the first one, but these things sort of happen, I guess, occasionally.
There's a difference too, because I think the first one, I don't know how many places that it actually got submitted to be classified to. So, like, there's this whole idea of, oh, it's banned, but it's like, well, no, it never was, like, given to a board to look at. But, of course, they would have banned it. So if you're going to submit it, you're just wasting money, essentially. But I know it was sort of, the first one was released during the video nasties kind of scandal in the UK. And so copies of it were getting confiscated from people trying to mail order it from Germany. It would get confiscated by customs. I watched an interview earlier about this guy that was like going on holidays through Germany. Where was he going? Somewhere else where you could get a hold of it. And he ended up putting it, he bought the VHS, hid the inside cover slicks and put it in a copy of something really banal. I don't know, like an Albert Brooks movie or something, just put it in there. And no one ever questioned him. And that's how he got it back to England.
I was actually really surprised when I couldn't, because when you shared the film with us on Dropbox, I couldn't actually.
Oh, I did not. Allegedly, Matt.
Oh, yeah, allegedly. I could not actually access the alleged file. But then I just found it randomly on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
What?
And I'm really surprised that it's on YouTube because how?
It won't be after you release this.
Yeah.
It's been up there since 2014.
Wow.
Has it?
I know.
Maybe it's because it's just not when people think of like that sort of fucked up film, they think of like, I don't know, Pasolini or something like that. And so maybe the censors at YouTube are on the lookout for that sort of stuff, but maybe because Nekromantik's not that well known, maybe it's just not on the list somewhere at Google HQ or something.
Maybe they spelt it with a C on the watch list. Just to Nekromantik, okay.
Yes. Yeah. But basically it's about this guy who he works for Joe's cleaning agency.
That's right.
Which I find fantastic.
The best thing about this film is like how banal and like campy some of the shit is. Like his name's like what, Robert or Bob as well.
Rob. And so they clean up.
Is
dead
a common
bodies.
German name.
Rob, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
A guy who I used to have sex with, and I always kept forgetting his name. I kept making up something that was very like Slavic or German, and every time we met each other, he's like, "No, it's Rob." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Okay, Roberto.
So normal. Sorry.
and so he works for a company that cleans up dead bodies from on the side of the road, and
but they're called like Joe's street cleaners. All you ever see them do is clean up dead bodies.
Yeah, and their symbol is the Nazi skull thing, isn't it? That's a thing.
Yep.
That's a West German filmmaker being edgy, I guess. Like, what's it called? It's called something. It's like a German name. The skull.
I don't know what it's called.
Totten something.
As one or two, as someone born after the fall of the German Wall, I don't understand what West. the German Wall. I don't understand West German.
Speaking of that, I think Ali's seen this, but there's this documentary on people who fall in love with objects. And
yes, you have shown me this.
One of them is a woman who was in love with the Berlin Wall and was obviously very disturbed when they knocked it down. She was like, "You killed my husband."
And then you're prostituting him by selling bits of him in shops.
Yes. And she has a piece of him on her mantelpiece, which I think is
she does.
very romantic. Perhaps necromantic.
It
was never alive, so.
Segue, circle back.
Yeah,
right.
So basically he's this kind of schlubby guy working for this company which collects dead bodies, and then he collects some of the organs, and he's sort of like a necrophilia guy, and he's with a lady friend.
Betty.
Wife. It's his wife, Betty.
Are they married? I don't.
No, I don't think they're married.
I feel like they're married. In my canon, they're married.
Okay.
You made it so much more wholesome than it was.
Yeah, married in the flesh.
Because she's like, "I'm gonna leave you. Like, you don't provide for me." Blah blah blah.
They're married. They're married till death do us part. So.
So basically, they get a. He finds a corpse, like a pretty intact corpse, because normally he's getting.
Is it?
It's a bit rotten.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not cut in half.
Swamp
it's been in the swamp, days. So it's
No. So you've missed
nice
the best
moist.
part. You missed the best part about the corpse, though. Is the scene where we like the it's like it's some guy. We find out how the guy dies, and I think it's. The music in this entire film is fantastic as well.
I love the music.
And he's like, sitting? There's a guy sort of like he's in his backyard, going up his tree, picking apples off his tree. And there's another guy who's just sitting there listening to, I don't even know what you'd call the music. Almost like, I feel like
nationalistic
German music in his backyard, stroking and like reflicking his gun.
It's like very German gun. I don't know.
German gun.
I'm like, this is a German gun. It is not an American gun at all.
Yeah, I think he had a Luger as well. Like, wasn't he sort of? He was playing with a Luger first.
He was, and then he's sinking a whole lot of beers and shooting birds, which is a very German Sunday activity.
Yeah, but in a very
in
sort
a lawn
of
chair,
in a very domestic, like suburban setting as well. I feel it's like pre-Lynchian sort of kind of suburban setting.
David Lynch basically lifted all his ideas off this German West German.
How it happened.
Yeah,
and the guy that he kills was wearing socks and sandals, which I think is important.
Well, if he's wearing socks and sandals, killing him is, it's mercy, really.
You're the one who lives in Melbourne.
The rest of his body's life definitely, got what it deserved. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, the guy who's shooting birds accidentally shoots his neighbor who's picking apples and then falls off the ladder and impales himself on a apple picking implement of some sort, and he dies that way. Or maybe he dies from getting shot. I don't know.
Well, he got shot in the neck, so I'm pretty sure that may have been.
It could have been, yeah.
But the sound effects are perfect as well. And then it gets carted off in a wheelbarrow, just like not even like subtly. He's just like walking down the street, basically.
He's got this blanket over it, but leaves the head hanging out. It's like, I'm just going to keep looking over his shoulder like someone could see me at any moment. Like, it is not well disguised.
Oh, it's so good.
And supposedly, I mean, we're inferring the fact that he dumped it in the river. Like, I guess that's the.
I guess.
Yeah.
I love how they like infer the fact that he dumped it in the river, but they don't trust the audience enough to cover the body in the wheelbarrow.
No, you need to know what it is.
Hey, they paid money for that terrible fake body. They need to show it up.
So anyway, the apple picker gets thrown in the river, and then Rob from Joe's cleaning agency, or whatever the fuck it's called, finds the body and brings it home to his girlfriend, and then they fuck it. They have a threesome with the corpse.
It's not fresh.
They make a beautiful, beautiful love.
That's
just no, and we have to be, respectful here as well. They have protected sex with a condom. It's very wholesome.
It's so good.
There's nothing salacious
and they
about
use
this.
They use like a pipe for his dick too, for the dead body's dick, and then put a condom on it, because that's going to be comfortable. I mean,
you wouldn't want to get pregnant, man. I mean, you just got to.
You just wouldn't.
I don't have a vagina. Shot.
1980s. This would have come out during the AIDS epidemic. You just want to promote safe sex.
Yeah, but even so, even with a condom. Like I was saying, I don't have a vagina, but I don't think a pipe would be very comfortable. It's going to go out on a limb.
Was that a pun? According to the director's commentary, it's a broom handle.
Oh.
Which I don't think makes very much difference.
It doesn't look like
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
It shows him cutting off the pipe. Okay, sure.
I know. I don't know.
Speaking of safe sex, though, I don't know if the AIDS thing is something that you picked up on, Matt, but for the second film anyway, when I was looking at it, some guy apparently wrote in a book on transgressive gay cinema of the 80s and 90s that the second movie anyway, I don't know if he's talking about the first movie as well, is effectively just an allegory for the AIDS movement. It is just trying to be didactic in promoting safe sex. So, I mean, that's what I came away from this film with. Like, be safe, have wholesome sex, don't do anything naughty. That's all I love
that they put a condom on the broom handle
implement,
or whatever it was. But meanwhile they're licking a corpse.
They are licking a corpse.
It's very safe. Very
some
very
heavy petting.
Yes.
It's all about foreplay.
Yeah. So that's basically that's
that's
15 minutes.
I was like, you haven't covered the bit. You haven't. It's so long. It's like 71 minutes. It's not even feature length.
No, the sex scene. You mean?
Oh right, yeah. The sex scene.
The sex scene is it's like 5-7 minutes long, and you're like,
and
then
But what about the piano?
Yeah,
moving or like holding each other.
Yeah, very romantic.
Nekromantik.
Necromantic. But what happens after that, Matt? Because I feel like the funniest bit is yet to come.
What does happen after that? It's such a cascade of images that I can't order them into.
He loses his job.
Yes.
And she is very upset.
Yes. And then she leaves him, basically, and then she takes the corpse, which he's not very happy about.
Which is suspended on a wall, just dripping.
Dripping
and
blood.
she takes it, and he has this horrific realization that it's gone with this like crash cut editing between the corpse that was there and the corpse is no longer there. And it's just like, oh no.
And then
he's devastated.
he gets a cat to try and say sorry and to her, and then kills the cat.
Yeah, because she's not there.
But
cat's kind of annoying.
important detail though, he doesn't immediately try to kill the cat. He tries to feed the cat a body part, because
Liver or something.
he keeps all the body parts in like jars as well. It has them like stacked up on the wall. Tries to feed the cat something. Cat's like, "Fuck off! I don't want this," and then kills the cat. It's important to get these details correct. Yeah.
But after he kills the cat,
the cat is like
in its entrail.
Yeah, he's having a bath, and the cat is above him on the towel rack, and its blood is dripping into the bath, and he's like getting a bit turned on by that, and then he gets the guts out of the cat and rubs it all over himself, and then descends into. That's kind of the gateway into the last bit of the film, isn't it? He just That's after that is when he's running around, picks up a hooker.
Well, there's that dream sequence as well.
I love the dream.
Like drinks like a lot, takes like an overdose of pills or something like that, and then has like a hallucination with the best music, frolicking around in idyllic German rustic setting, like with a dead body, it's like sort of whipping it in the air.
He's like throwing guts or something.
They throw a is it a head, isn't it? Like
it's a head.
Yeah, they're playing like volleyball with a head.
It's this catch, it's like it's catch with my dad,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then after that he goes and gets a prostitute and wants to have sex with her on a tombstone. Can't get it up, so he chokes her and kills her, and then he can get it up. And then the cemetery groundskeeper or some random guy just comes and it's like, and then he gets the shovel and not beheads him.
I don't know.
He's like cut at the jaw.
It's half the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to be very like technical about this,
because like afterwards he's like making like gurgling and it looks pretty funny, but it's pretty good for a no budget film. I think that effect.
But there's another effect we haven't talked about yet.
Before we get to the ending,
that's the grand finale.
Yeah,
we should build up to the climax of the film.
We should.
Much like Bataille.
So this is what I was going to say about Bataille, but I feel like it's actually more appropriate for the way this film ends. So let's build this up a little bit.
Yeah.
The way that I read about, or the way that I sort of think about this film and Bataille, and I sort of see them sort of working the same space, is that this is to get much more serious, I guess. These are both books about both like texts, about the loss of the transcendent, but also about the severing of sex and the erotic from reproduction, from life itself, and conflating it with death, and therefore with conflating eros with thanatos, to use the Freudian terms. And the way that it plays out in Bataille is that they kill the priest, or that Simone is effectively raping the priest, choking him at the same time, and he only dies at the moment of orgasm. Right, that's it's the culmination of like death and the resistance of death and pleasure playing out at the same time. And in this movie, I think you get that much more forcefully by the way that it ends, where he is sitting on a bed with let's just say a very comical prosthetic penis. It's very bad, and kills himself, and at the moment of like stabbing himself with his knife, ejaculates everywhere in a very sort of like grand moment of like pleasure, I guess. Yeah, but it's that like final sort of circle moment where like sort of everything like, you know, it's the orgasm itself that reproduces itself, not something that reproduces life or something like that. It's this final circle that ends at the death. I think there's a quote as well from Bataille, which I feel sort of sums up both this book and the other book as well, and sort of I feel like this plays itself out for the rest of the 20th century to a certain degree. There's sort of the narrator of Bataille's book talking, and it struck me that death was the sole outcome of my erection. And if Simone and I were killed, the universe of our unbearable personal vision was certain to be replaced by the pure stars, fully unrelated to any external gazers, and realizing in a cold state without human delays or detours. Something that strikes me as the goal of my sexual licentiousness. A geometric incandescence, among other things, the coinciding point of life and death, being in nothingness, perfectly fulgurating. And like that's the sort of point that both these two texts are sort of linked. That, and of course, you know, this in a very sort of French way relates back to the sort of the French idea of la petite mort. The orgasm is a little death. That every time you have an orgasm, you're also dying in a certain way, or you sort of you're approaching that point of being, which is of course correlated with nothingness.
Yeah, and in the movie, I just like we mentioned as well, that moment is because he's sort of stabbing himself to kind of get the ultimate high, I guess, or the ultimate orgasm, and I think it was Reuben said, the prosthetic penis is quite fake looking.
It's wonderful. It's so bad.
And so is the ejaculation. I was just like, no one's come like that before.
Well, no one's ever done this before.
Yeah, that's true. And then he starts coming blood. That's the other part of it that's great, is that like he starts coming, but then the blood starts shooting out as well.
Which made me think of Antichrist, the last movie where that happens. I'm like, hold on. Is this linked? Are you referencing this movie?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like Reuben says, these can be kind of tied together in really weird ways. And I'm wondering if the director, what's his name, George something,
Jörg Buttgereit.
Yeah. I'm wondering if he was like a big Bataille stan or something, because you know there's
maybe I just chose a really great movie to thematically link with the book.
Well, but there's so much there as well, because it's like I forgot to mention as well during the necrophilia scene when they're sucking the corpse, the eye, and how like they're sucking on the eye.
And
the eyes,
apparently that was improvised.
The movie even like starts with this couple in a car. They have a car crash, and the man's eye is just sort of like come out. Like, and I can't imagine that's not like a reference or any textual reference.
And it opens with a woman like peeing on her undergarments, which, although Simone never actually wears undergarments, but she's always peeing on her dress or the closest bit of cloth.
She's peeing on a dead pigeon as well. It's just very hard to see.
I didn't even
know that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Lots of peeing in this movie, lots of death in this movie. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
There was the one scene that you didn't mention in your little synopsis, was the scene where he goes to the movie cinema.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And which is interesting because he's like almost going to forget, because it's the first thing he does after he kills the cat, and it's like he wants to forget. He's like, I don't want to think about my wife anymore. So he goes and sees this like brutal horror movie where this woman gets raped and tortured, and everyone in the cinema is like being incredibly romantic with their partner while they're watching it.
Importantly, though, the romance only happens when the so the first part of the film you see is this sort of, classic trope of like slashers where the woman is like running away from the killer and at every corner like runs back into the killer and is trying to run away. When the killer eventually like catches her and like has her like sort of chained up or tied up or something like that, it's starting to become slightly more erotic with her. Like the camera pans to all the different couples in the thing, particularly the women, like mainly. It has suddenly been like, oh, yeah, okay, let's get it. Like, everyone starts making out in the theater. It's like, this is like, spectacle, postmodern spectacle, effectively.
Yeah. What I love about that film scene as well is that the film they're watching has even lower production values than the film we're watching. Like the sound is all out of sync and it's like really bad. It's like,
But you've also got the I feel like in every all the different characters in the movie theater as well are also maybe
is a guy with a cowboy hat on.
Yeah, reflections of the viewers of the film as well. You've got like all the people who are turned on by the film. You've got the asshole jock who buys 3 beers, popcorn or whatever, and like, is always kicking the back of the chair. You've got the intellectual guy in the back.
Film critic.
The film critic sitting there smoking, taking notes on his notepad.
Like, giggling at the film.
Yeah. This film is such fun. Like it's more like I was saying in the group chat before that it's kind of like it's really well matched with Bataille because it's doing the same things as Bataille, but it's funny. Like, and I don't know if it's intentionally funny or not. It seems like
I think it has to be. It's got a campy sort of funniness, and I think the funniest part of the movie is also the final scene as well, where like Rob gets buried in the same. I almost mentioned it's like the same sort of burial plot that he rapes the woman in as well, the dead woman in. And the final image of the film is just like a heel being stuck in, like a woman sort of like, stamping with her heels into the grave
with the shovel because she's going
to dig him up.
And fucking.
I guess we can
that's
just
the premise for the sequel.
Yeah,
is that what happens in the sequel?
Yeah.
Oh, so Rob's still the protagonist. He's just dead.
He is.
It's the circle of life, really, isn't it?
Moves us all.
I'll be back in a second. I'm just going to get another drink.
Yeah. But I first watched this with 2 of my PhD supervisors. And we were drinking, and we thought the sex scene was the funniest thing we'd ever seen. And then this time, I guess I knew what was coming, so I didn't find it as amusing. But like just I describe it as like Elton John-esque piano, kind of like romantic, and it's just like, wow. And also the body, when you tell people it's necromantic and it's exactly what it sounds like, I don't think they necessarily assume that it's not like someone has just died. This is a slimy, decaying corpse. It's just it really tries to involve you in the visceral kind of, like, you can almost smell it. It is disgusting. And they're just licking its face. And then there's that scene where she makes it give her head.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. That's so good.
Also a touching moment.
Yeah. And you can just imagine what that apartment smells like too, where he's got like all the organs on the shelves and stuff. You're like, what?
Yeah. And they shot the film over 2 years. Over 2 years. Well, they're super poor and they're just making it on weekends with their friends. And
doing this for 2 years. I'm over it.
At no point did anyone go, this is I don't think it's a great idea anymore. No. So it just kept going. But I was saying before, the director's commentary didn't reveal too much, mostly because I was like, I just want to hear about the why, but he didn't address any of that. It was just like how this got made. And those the body parts that are in jars, some of them were in alcohol, like formaldehyde or whatever, to preserve them, because they are real eyes and things. But other ones, they couldn't afford all the alcohol, so some of them are just in water and they're actually decaying in this apartment where they're shooting it, and it would have stunk to high heaven. Yeah, so it was fun facts.
There's some method acting for you though, like you.
Yeah.
I feel like Rio hasn't really spoken enough about this film. What did you think about this film, Rio? You've been ominously silent.
He had to have a shower after he watched it. So.
I mean, I wish I didn't eat breakfast while I was watching it. I want to know, similar to Story of the Eye. I want to know the why. I want to know the why. Like it's funny, it's silly. And I think I got to the silliness with the apple shooting scene where I was like, what's going on in this movie? And then the romantic three-way with the decaying, rotting, stinky corpse. I don't know if I liked it. Purely because I don't think I'll ever watch it again. I can't see a reason.
Now we have to do an episode on the sequel.
On the sequel, yeah. Thank you, Matt. I'm trying to think of a reason. Ali, you just said that it took them 2 years to make this film, and I can't imagine devoting. And as someone who really loves stupid art, but I like stupid art that I can do in 15 minutes. 2 years. I don't know. I'm glad it exists. The bed that they lie in has like a grate, and the first time you see Rob properly, he's lying down, and I can't tell if it's his like dark pubes or if he's wearing black underwear. But like he's just got a shirt on and he's kind of naked underneath it, and he's watching this documentary about getting used to like how you can get so used to something that they become erotic.
And just in general, like being desensitized towards violence.
Yeah. And it seems to be that's very kind of, because then he has this hallucination of, or memory of this farmer de-skinning and I don't remember what the word is. Excarnating a rabbit, which you see, which is really happening to a real rabbit. And it seems to be how he gets this idea that to seduce his wife, he's going to bring home a real corpse, because he has been desensitized to corpses and she has been desensitized to corpses, and they need something new. And it almost kind of was, I don't remember the director's name, is the director kind of making a statement on German life? Because, this is 87 or, 85 to 87. It's just before the Berlin Wall has fallen. Kind of many people in their country were kind of going through a tragedy, had been through the tragedy of World War II, and then were kind of living in through this like murky Cold War tragedy. Everyone was kind of desensitized to brutality. Yeah, see, like these were my thoughts, and maybe this is why I'm being ominously silent, Reuben. I can't connect maybe to what he was trying to say. Although I want there to be a meaning. I want there to be something meaningful, and something kind of relieving for the viewers of this movie.
And I think it does definitely come back to the points we made before about Bataille as well. Like the way that it's structured wants you to read, like you're like, well, why the hell would anyone make a film about necrophilia without having a like larger purpose or a larger meaning towards it? It's almost like we can't accept the film as being merely like just necrophilia. It has to be something more than that. I think maybe part of that as well comes back to this sort of more ancient Aristotelian idea about what art is supposed to do, like for Aristotle's way of like circumventing Plato's banishment of poetry from the Republic, is like say, well, Plato gets annoyed at art for being a representation of the real rather than the real thing itself, and any sense of representation of like tragedy will sort of play itself out in reality if you start to represent it, is sort of the fear. And you see this like today, with people wanting to ban video games because if you play Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto, you'll become, a mass serial killer or whatever, right? Art replicates, or life replicates art. Aristotle's sort of way out of that conundrum is to say that, well, all tragedy is cathartic. That you see these things play out, and they, I guess it's the relieving of repression or something like that. The playing out of repressed in a sort of more Freudian way out of it. And I'm not, as I think I've probably said before on this podcast, I don't like Aristotle. And I think the Aristotelian way out of that conundrum is bullshit. But I think that's kind of, we still have like inbuilt within us the Aristotelian desire that art, and particularly transgressive art and perverse art, must have some sort of broad social purpose. Otherwise, we can't really deal with it. So, and even when I'm like, I try to give these sort of more academic and symbolic readings of the film, like making it feel more serious than it actually is. Like this is, and I think as we've sort of demonstrated by the amount that we've laughed throughout this section of the podcast, this is a very funny film, which maybe says more about us than anything else. But I don't know. It's the kind of film that I think I would love to show to people as well.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's definitely one of those.
Don't tell them anything about it. Each grab a 6-pack each, just like, and just get drunk. And it's like it was like you play a drinking game watching this film. Getting like dropping acid or something like that and watching this film would also be really interesting.
I don't know if this is maybe getting a little off track, but I don't think it is. The other movie that this reminded me of, maybe quite shockingly, is God's Own Country, which is a gay romance movie.
But when they fuck in the mud, love that scene. So
what it really reminded me of is in that movie they kind of fall in love during lambing season, and the actors in the movie really assist giving birth to lambs. And there's one lamb that kind of born is born fallow or whatever the word is. It's born dead, and he strips the fur from this lamb and then gives it to the lambs, like the runt of the litter. And then over the course of the movie, the runt of the litter kind of is alive. And the end of Nekromantik, we see that same vision of the rabbit in reverse. So the rabbit's coming back to life. And I don't know, maybe there was something in there. There's something in my brain about how, like, for the director, the writer of this movie, only through kind of being desensitized to this kind of disgusting atrocity that we can kind of divine a new life. Like, oh, okay, I murdered and raped a woman's corpse. I brought home a dead body that my wife ran away with it. I killed myself in a violent orgasmic spree. I committed disgusting, inhumane atrocities, and therefore maybe now that I've been desensitized to the worst of humanity, I can begin anew again, or life can begin anew again.
Yeah, I think as well, I think there is the possibility of reading too much into this, because someone mentioned before, reading too much into things sometimes I feel like is a strategy that people use to anoint something as art. So, and I think someone mentioned 50 Shades of Grey before, like, which I have admitted that I've not read it, have no desire to read it, but I remember seeing all these, like, you know, hot takes online or like articles about like, oh, how it's great, how like women can explore their like kinkier S&M side. Yeah, no, but it's like the idea that its purpose beyond being just like apparently tittillating, I'm using scare quotes there, for people because it explores certain things, kind of anoints it with this meaning that it doesn't necessarily need to have. And so it kind of makes it more significant or important than it actually kind of is. So, and I think like you can do that with things like this, which I totally just believe that this film is built around the corpse sex scene. Like, it's just that I want to film this. I want to film a threesome with a corpse, and then they just built the movie around it. I'm convinced that's what happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think the rabbit. Oh, sorry. Go.
Look. You know, I'm searching to the void to find something.
What are you going to say about the rabbit, Ali?
Oh, the rabbit. We get this a little bit in films, like I'm thinking of like Faces of Death or those other kind of Mondo films that are trying to convince you that death is real, and they'd get away with it by kind of having an actual animal slaughter. And so by proxy of having this real death in front of you, you're more likely to go, wow, that's just a real corpse. And which I don't think any one of us, I don't know about you guys, I think I gave you the Blu-ray rip. I watched the Blu-ray copy, and it's very clearly not real. But, you know, back when this was circulated, they were getting like bootleg copies that have been, you know, degenerated through being copied so many times from copies of copies of copies that some people thought it was real. And it's sort of like this weird aesthetic thing where the kind of shittiness of this already Super 8 movie or whatever it was is kind of degenerated to the point where you go, oh, is it real? Did he actually get real bodies? Which, I find that interesting.
It's also like maybe, and this is maybe more us viewing it now than it would have been when it first came out. I'm not sure when it comes to time-wise, but in that sense, it kind of reminds me of Cronenberg's Videodrome, which is one of my favorite films of all time. Also another incredibly funny film as well.
Yeah,
but
hilarious.
there's numerous parts of like Videodrome, which we should actually probably look at another podcast. Actually, be good to look at that. Where you can't really tell if like any of the videos or any of the images in the film are real or not. And I'm talking about like, you know, this within the film, the characters aren't entirely sure if anything's happened. There's like a sort of a weird sort of pornographic channel, and where there's like, you know, people being murdered and tortured and stuff like that on this channel, and you can't really tell, is this just like a simulation or is this actually happening in real time? And I think maybe part of what this film is doing in terms of its relationship to desensitization is it's reminding you, this is what Bataille is also doing as well, it's reminding you that death and violence have a fundamental relationship to eros, to sex, that, and this is also like, you know, the Marquis de Sade's point as well, that sort of the way sort of this French tradition works against the Enlightenment, that these things are intrinsically related. And even though we might try to idealize sexual relations in terms of their reproductive factors, in terms of the way that they are life-giving in numerous ways, they are, of course, life-giving. I mean, there's no point denying that, but they are also like keenly linked to the death drive, to violence. And there's a sort of, the way that we experience these things in a simulated fashion comes through in both these texts. So in the Bataille novella, you have the bull fight scenes where we can, you know, extrapolate that out towards like our modern day obsession with sports, and seeing the way that simulated violence, particularly like combat sports like UFC and those kinds of things, they are erotically charged. And anyone who tries to deny that would be, not particularly intelligent. But you also see it play out in the movie with the movie scene as well, right? There's an erotic like sort of charge towards this, and we might try and. I feel like what the film is also like, doing is that we've become desensitized to that simulated version, where we watch this film, we don't even really, I think, recognize the erotically charged aspect of it. Like we've become desensitized, I think. Like maybe I lost the point of that argument at the end there, but someone else can take over before.
Lost in an ocean of eros.
Yes, lost in an ocean of eros, alas.
Right. Any concluding thoughts, people, on either of these? I would recommend Nekromantik. It is on YouTube. A really crappy version of it. So that probably, like Ali said, that probably adds to it because the Blu-ray version kind of detracts from it.
It's too good. It's too pretty.
Yeah. So
do you think? Can I? Do you think that the Story of the Eye holds up? Do y'all think Story of the Eye holds up? Or does it feel a little bit flaccid?
I feel like it does as a piece of, like I said, at least formally pornography, because there's stuff in there that I still think, it was written in the first half of the 20th century, and it's still pretty fucked up. Like it's not because we have this tendency to think now that we live in 2021 and you can find porn of everything basically. Just imagine the most fucked up thing you can and there's probably porn of it, right? Like but it's still pretty, when you read Bataille, it's still even now still pretty confronting. So I think on that level it sort of holds up as a piece of pornography, which is where I'm coming from. Like I know some people don't view it that way, but I think it does in terms of being in that kind of Sardian tradition as well, of being kind of transgressive and Anyone else?
Well, as the someone else you were referring in terms of the thinking that it doesn't quite classify as pornography. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about whether it holds up. I can definitely see it as being a period piece to a certain extent, in that it's something that we still read today because of the fact that it's contextually quite important, more than important in and of itself. Like I feel like there are a number of novels throughout the 20th century which are going to be remembered more because of the fact that they played a large role in breaking down taboos and breaking down censorship laws, and probably won't be remembered beyond that. And I feel like Bataille's novel kind of maybe transcends that to a little bit, but I also don't feel like it's his best work anyway. Like I prefer Blue of Noon personally. And I think his essays and his nonfiction is actually a better way of getting at his work to a certain extent, or that at least this novel can't be viewed in isolation. This novel has to be viewed within the discourse, to use that term that we all love. And in that context, I think it maybe has lasting meaning, but I don't know. This is not a... we'll probably know more in 100 years, obviously. Yeah. But
I think it holds up. I think it's still shocking in terms of its transgression. I remember when I stumbled upon it, I borrowed it out, obviously, was reading it on the way home on the bus and then realized what I was reading and felt the need to shut it. And I feel like I would still have that feeling of like, I wouldn't want someone reading this over my shoulder.